What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Mr. McGuinty's How-To Guides. I'm your host, P. McG. Today we're here to install the Airbox in the Mazdaspeed 3. Let's get to it. Tuning may be required after installing this product. Check your instructions for off-the-shelf map selection. Alright, tools required for this installation are a ratchet, 6-inch ratchet extension, 8mm socket or nut driver, 10mm socket or nut driver, and a 10mm wrench. Before we begin the tutorial, please be aware there are two different ways to remove as well as reinstall the product. Both removal and reinstallation procedures will be shown. Depending on what removal option you choose, you may be able to skip ahead in the video. Okay, start by using your 8mm socket or nut driver to remove the filter from the mass airflow housing. Now go ahead and disconnect the mass airflow sensor and set the wiring aside. Now, using your 8mm socket or nut driver, loosen and push back the worm clamp that connects the intake tube to the mass airflow housing. At this point in the removal process, COBB recommends using your extension and 10mm socket to remove these two nuts. If you prefer this method, go ahead and remove these two nuts now using your 10mm socket and 10-inch extension. Then gently pull up and outward to remove the mass airflow bracket and mass airflow housing from the intake tube. If you experience issues with this, continue to removal option 2. Using your 10mm socket, remove the bolts holding the mass airflow bracket to the mass airflow housing. Then tilt the mass airflow housing up and remove the rubber isolators. Once this has been completed, leave the mass airflow housing and mass airflow bracket in place. Okay, if you follow the option 1 removal path, you'll next want to take the mass airflow housing and orientate it as shown on the outside of the airbox. Next, take your mass airflow bracket and place it as shown. Now take your button head M5 screws, 5mm lock washers, and 5mm nylon flat washers and finger thread them into place. Now go ahead and tighten them down with your M5 Allen wrench. Alright, your airbox should now look like this. Okay, now go ahead and take the airbox and attach components and angle it down and inward in the engine bay, being sure to first insert the mass airflow housing into the intake tube, and then go ahead and push in and down to seat the bracket onto the mounting posts. Then secure these using your 10mm socket. At this point, the airbox should be loosely installed in the car. If you experience issues with this, continue to install option 2. Okay, for install option 2, since the original hardware is still in place, simply angle the airbox down and inward while lifting up on the mass airflow housing and then slide the airbox in place. Now take your button head M5 screws, 5mm lock washers, and 5mm nylon flat washers and finger thread them into place. Then tighten them down with your M5 Allen wrench. Okay, now using your 8mm socket or nut driver, reattach the air filter. Also make sure the worm clamp on the intake tube has been secured. Now reattach the mass airflow sensor. It's time to throw on the lid. Take your 5mm button head screws and 5mm nylon washers and test fit the lid. Be sure to start with the one at the rear of the airbox, as this is particularly difficult to get to. Once they've been finger threaded, go back and tighten them up with your Allen wrench. This concludes installation, but I highly suggest you stick around for sound bites in the post-installation product review. Okay, this product got high marks in the following categories. Lower intake temps. By isolating the intake from the engine bay, it reduces the amount of heat soak that the intake experiences. Additionally, isolating the intake from the rest of the engine bay allows for the coolest air possible to be sucked into the engine. Since the intake is now isolated and receiving the coolest air possible in the engine bay, you will see a little bit of a performance gain. Looks slick. The COBB Airbox is far more aesthetically pleasing than the OEM, and the COBB badging shows that you've done some work on your car. And finally, it's priced right. COBB's always been good about pricing their stuff to be competitive, and this product is no exception. Don't forget to stop by www.cobbtuning.com and check out all the other great products by COBB. And finally, don't forget to stop by and check us out on YouTube. Take it easy, everybody, and we'll see you next install.